on and turn your volume on.
Turn what on?
This
Isn't this on?
it is. It is. I hear you through it.
You hear me through that, right? Okay. Yeah, no, this is on. I think when it's blinking, it's not on.
Oh, okay.
Okay, good evening, everybody. We're going to get this meeting started. I apologize for the late start. There was an incident on the subway, and many of us couldn't get here, including one of our most important members, our administrative assistant, who has all the technology to get things going. She is logging on to the team so that our translators can do their job right now. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 7 p.m. And I'm going to put a link in the chat for everybody to please sign in. It's an attendance form. We are coming to you from PS 230 in Kensington. I'm going to ask everybody here who's in person to please sign the attendance sheet that is at that side table. And everybody in the chat, please sign the attendance sheet that's linked in the chat. And I'm going to turn it over to the interpreters to please introduce themselves. I will first turn it over to the Mandarin interpreter.
Hello, good evening. I'm one of the Mandarin interpreter tour.
Hi, this is Mandarin interpreter Sylvia.
And the Spanish interpreters?
Hi, good evening. This is Maricela, one of the Spanish interpreters. I'll be making the announcement for Spanish for offering interpretation services. Buenas noches a todos. Hoy día con Alexandro y Maricela estaremos ofreciendo servicios de interpretación en español. Por favor, marque al 347-966-4114 y ingrese el número de conferencia 171-455-362, símbolo numeral. Si desea escuchar audio en español, pero desea permanecer en esta sala de conferencia con Zoom para poder ver la audiencia en su computadora, silencie su computadora y el volumen y marque su teléfono a la línea de conferencia en español. Nuevamente es el 347-966-4114. Ingrese el número de conferencia 171-455-362, símbolo numeral. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And the Bangla interpreter, please.
সন্ধ্যা সবাইকে আপনারা যদি এই অনুষ্ঠান বাংলায় শুনতে চান আপনারা ডায়াল করতে পারেন 347-966-4114 নাম্বারটা আবার বলছি 347-966-4114 তারপর আপনারা একটা আইডি নাম্বার দিবেন ওটা হলো 648-890-562 হ্যাশট্যাগ আবার নাম্বারটা হইল 648-890-562 হ্যাশট্যাগ থ্যাংক ইউ
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to our secretary to call the roll.
Thank you.
Actually, 1 second. I'm sorry. I'm one of the interpreters, Mandarin interpreters. I'm still waiting to be admitted, actually.
Oh, okay. All right. We're working on that.
Me too. Both of Mandarin interpreters are still waiting online.
Okay, we're working on it. Are the Bangla and the Spanish interpreters on?
I'm still waiting also.
Okay, everybody's still waiting. Okay. I guess we should pause while we get those online.
I don't think you should pause. Nobody needs interpretation.
Oh, okay. Well,
Because somebody needs. This is not possible.
But if somebody comes late, I'm going to. You want to do the roll call? Maybe that we can do.
We only do English.
Okay, all right, we're gonna proceed with the roll call while we're working on getting the interpreters on the, online.
Thank you. Councilmember Antonia Ferraro,
Present?
Councilmember Leslie King,
Present.
Councilmember Vanessa Gonzalez Uoka,
Present.
Councilmember Nancy Cruz present, Councilmember Donalda Chumley is absent, Councilmember Nancy Randall,
Present.
Councilmember Hans Arieta,
Present.
Councilmember Lauren Barkin is absent, Councilmember Mahmoud Rashid, Councilmember Danley Vidal is absent, Councilmember Jonathan Davis,
Present.
High School Councilmember Annalie Diata. Is she?
I don't see her in the, list of participants.
If you're here, unmute and let us know you're here. Councilmember Annalie Diata. Okay,
It doesn't
I'm gonna
seem-
take that as
Yeah, I
absent.
don't think she's here.
And, okay.
All right.
So we have quorum.
Okay, great. We're going to continue because it seems there isn't anybody at the moment requesting interpretation. And our AA is going to continue to work on getting you guys connected on the teams. So I will turn it over to Leslie to read the introduction.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to the District 15 Community Education Council tonight. We appreciate your time and are glad you could join us. For those of you who are new to the CEC meetings, there are 32 CECs throughout the city plus 4 citywide councils. Each CEC represents a community school district, and each is made up of 12 volunteer members, 10 of whom are elected by parents in the district. The remaining members are appointed by the Brooklyn Borough President and 2 high school student members. CEC 15 is a state-mandated public body responsible for ensuring that public school parents and the public have input in education decisions that are made at the school district level. Our council reviews education policies and advocates for high school quality education that benefit all of our District 15 public elementary and middle school students. CEC 15 serves 36 elementary and middle schools and 1 high school under the oversight of our superintendent. CEC members serve in an advisory role on education matters to the district superintendent, the chancellor of the Department of Education, and to the state and city elected officials. We approve district school zoning lines submitted by the Department of Education. We evaluate our district superintendent. We review the district's educational programs, and we support school leadership teams. We also submit recommendations for the School Construction Authority's annual capital plan. And as of recent, amendments to the law, CECs advise in the selection of parent coordinators. We actively seek input and feedback from the public and encourage you to visit our website, cecd15.org. Take a look at our Facebook page, connect with us on X. Is that what it is? Not Twitter. X, and write to us about any issues you may want to address or learn about. Each school has a CEC liaison. All of our names and contact info are available on our website.
You're next, Jonathan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So tonight's calendar meeting is in person and will include a public comment period. We will take both remote and in-person comments to gather additional feedback from our families and school community members. You may leave your camera on, or for your own privacy, if you prefer, you may use audio only during the comment period and throughout the meeting. Rules of engagement. When you comment, please comment on the topic. Respect the privacy of others, and please do not include names of children or staff. Guests who make inappropriate comments will be removed from the meeting. During the public comment period, those attending virtually may raise their hand to comment or indicate in the chat that they would like to speak. Those called upon will be unmuted. If you are attending in person, you must sign the guest attendance sheet and indicate whether you would like to comment. Speakers will be called on one at a time and will be allowed 1 minute each for comment. We will hear as many speakers as the time allows. It is possible that not every comment and/or question will be given time, so the best way to get your question answered is always to write to the CEC at cec15@schools.nyc.gov. CEC members will also be given a comment period. Members will be called upon and are each permitted 1 2-minute comment and/or question. If members do not have a comment, they may cede their time to the chair.
Okay, great, Jonathan. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn it over to the IBO for their presentation. You can come up here and sit right in my seat.
We're going to do a little bit of rotation. We're going to do a couple of different
Okay,
introductions, but yeah.
okay.
So just sit here.
Just sit there. The mic is on.
Is our presentation here?
Let's see, what are we going to do about the presentation?
You want me to handle it while you're handling it? Yeah, it's one of the ones that's already open.
So you're going to share your screen?
Yeah, okay, great, thank you. But can you give me permission to use yours? The presentation will be a little bit more important for the budget side, so I'll just start to get us started. My name's Tina Guarda. I'm the Chief Outreach and Engagement Officer for the Independent Budget Office. We are a nonpartisan city government agency tasked with providing independent revenue and spending estimates after the 3 different budget plans for the city. So we do an independent look at the money coming in and the money that we think will be coming out for about 3 to 4 years in the future. And we do this after the November plan, after the preliminary plan, which is where we are right now in the budget cycle, and after the executive budget, which will come out at the end of April. We also regularly analyze the fiscal impact of major New York City public policies. Our mission is to enhance understanding of New York City's budget, public policy, and economy through these independent analyses. And one of the things that we do is we accept requests for research into budgetary and policy matters. So we can take these requests from any community group, from even individuals. We regularly are in touch with council members, although we are an independent entity from them, so they don't necessarily always like what our analysis might lead to. For example, recently, another request that came in that maybe you all might be more familiar with is Senator Jackson asked us to analyze the impact of the class size law. And we've had a new leadership, and under the new leadership of Louisa Chafee, our new executive director, we are revamping our outreach efforts, and we're trying to reach out to as many corners of New York City as we can to help the public understand all aspects of the New York City budget. This includes school budgets, which we're going to be presenting on today, and the implications of the budget on public policy. And as part of this outreach, I want to emphasize that we want to hear from you. You are the experts on what happens on the ground. You live the consequences of the data points that we analyze. And if there are points, even within this presentation that we're giving to you today, in which we see something in the data or we see a process that you actually experience differently, excuse me, we want to hear from you. And I would appreciate it if you wouldn't be shy about this, because we see what's given to us on paper and in data, but we can't be on the ground at all times. And that's why we love coming here to present to you all. So I thank you for the opportunity again to present today, and I'm going to pass it on to Julia Conrad, our Assistant Director for Education and a former teacher at the DOE, and Emma Gossett, our Education Policy Analyst.
I don't know if it's going. Oh, okay, great. Oh, okay, great. No, that's perfect. I just can't tell if this is the same. It's not. Now it's good. If you can go to the next one. Great. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, I actually was a teacher in District 15, but in a high school, so a little bit different than some of the group here at John Jay and Park Slope Collegiate. So I'm going to talk a little bit about specifically about our ed team, and then Emma is going to walk us through what you can do at home. And what we really hope is that we're giving resources today that you can go home and look at your own school budget. You could go to the next one, sorry, and the next one too. So I'm going to skip over this because Tina mentioned a little bit about what we do. Do you want me to just toggle? Is that easier than you having to do it? Or are you running the PowerPoint?
She's running it on here.
Oh, okay,
and
great.
I'm running it here.
Oh, okay, great. So if you could go to the next one then. Okay. I just don't want to. Okay, perfect. So the IBO education team has sort of an interesting history that we wanted to highlight, especially given that this year there's a lot going on around conversations around mayoral control. So in 2002, New York state law abolished the 32 local school boards and mayoral control began. And it was during that time, and then when mayoral control was renewed in 2009, that there were additional calls for some nonpartisan group to provide oversight and transparency on the city's schools, both about the budget, but also about policy. And that's where IBO's education team really stepped in. So we have an expanded authority to really provide analysis on the school system. And so that's what is sort of our history for the team itself. You can go to the next one. Should I stop? It is, I think it's working on the Zoom, but I don't know.
It's working on this.
Just keep going.
Yeah, okay. So just as Tina mentioned, I wanted to give a little bit of a snapshot of the kind of research that our education team does, with the eye that if there's things that you're interested in, we can follow up more about that. And also, if you're interested in more information than what we have done research on, we can definitely chat more. But we've done research on things like teacher retention and teacher hiring trends in New York City, the number of bilingual teachers in New York City schools right now. As Tina mentioned, the cost of New York State's class size law. We've also looked a lot at programs that have COVID-era stimulus funds that are set to expire and what that impact might be on schools. And then Emma in particular has done a ton of research on the history of funding for 3K expansion and what some of the changes to that plan have looked like for New York City schools. You can go to the next one, please. Great, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Emma, who's going to tell us a little bit about the education budget and then walk through a school budget as well. Let's switch seats. Okay. Do you want me to? I can do that.
Hello, everyone. Okay, thank you for being here. I'm going to go into the city budget process, and we're going to start from the viewpoint of like mayor and city council, and then we'll delve into a little bit more about specifics for schools in particular. About that.
That's perfect, yeah.
Awesome. Great. So looking specifically from the school perspective, schools are allocated funds primarily through SAMs, which are school allocation memorandums. And those are released, the first batch of them at least, are released in May and June. And those go directly to principals. And the principals are then come up with their school's budget using the school allocation memorandums and the school's comprehensive education plan. That budget is then sent to the community school district superintendent, who reviews and approves it. And then that approval happens around July. And then, so those are like the major school focused budget occurrences. In terms of allocating funds, some really important dates are around enrollment. So initial allocations for schools occur through projected enrollment numbers, and those are taken in January. And then on October 31st, there is an actual enrollment taken, and there are mid-year adjustments to reflect that change in the actual versus projected. And then finally, the capital plan is released in November. And yeah. And yeah. Okay. Thank you. So now looking closer at how schools are actually funded, this is the 2022 to 2023 school year. And this is the overall budget. So the education department in New York City received $37.6 billion for that school year. And this breaks down where that money is coming from. So 54% of that is coming from the city, 36% from the state, and then smaller portions for federal funding. That chunk of COVID-era stimulus funds that you see, that's also 5%, runs out at the end of this fiscal year. And then that last little sliver is from private and other sources. Thanks. So this looks at it over time. So how has it changed? And there are two data points that I want to pull out here, and those are 2009 and 10 and 2021 and 22. And with those, you see a larger chunk of federal dollars coming in, and that was because of the 2008 financial crisis and then the COVID-era stimulus funding. So that's two places where we have seen federal stimulus go up, and then it's kind of tapered back to where it was. But overall, there has been a trend of increasing dollars, as you can see, and this is adjusted for inflation. So this looks at the federal, city, and state shares. And you can see again that uptick in 2010 and 2022. Yeah, great. Okay, so individual schools get a majority of their funding from the Fair Student Funding Formula, which allocates funds based on student enrollment and weights for different student populations. And these funds have fairly flexible usage. And then the other funds that schools are getting are from categorical grant funds and specific program initiatives. And these are fairly restricted in terms of what they can be used for within schools. And then District 75 and 79 receive funds outside of the Fair Student Funding.
You can click.
Yeah, you can click there.
And just keep, and one more, yeah, that's good.
So this is an example of three example students that we've created to show different examples of what the Fair Student Funding would look like for each of those students. So initially, a student is given a weight for their grade. It ranges from 1 to 1.08. So as you can see, student A is in grade 3, and their weight is 1. And then student B is in grade 7, and it's 1.08, which is the highest of those. And then additionally, there are additional weights for all of these various categories, including a need for academic intervention, special education, English language learners. And then this school year, they added in students in temporary housing weights, and if there's a concentration of need within your school. And so you can see that all of those weights add up to be that total weight at the bottom, which is their weighted enrollment, so not their actual enrollment. So a school may have fewer students, but have a higher weighted enrollment than another.
You can click twice, I think. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, Great. So some examples of categorical grant funding, they can come from many different places. There are a few we get from the state, there are a few we get from the federal government. And so, for example, the New York State textbook law and Title I school allocation from the federal government. And then the school allocation memorandums, the SAMs, they change from year to year, and the specific projects that they address vary widely. But for example, recent ones have included Project Pivot, AP for All, food education grant, and the increase in students in temporary housing. Okay. Great. So this is kind of the meat of the presentation. I want to show you how to find your school's budget.
Could we use your computer?
Yeah, would that be possible? Yeah, like share the screen and then like show them.
Because she wants to show.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay. Here, I'll go like this. Thank you. Okay.
So why don't I'll introduce it while you're setting up on that.
That'd be great.
Okay. So if you want to take a photo of the QR code, basically what that will take you to is a series of budget videos that IBO made. And those budget videos will walk you through what Emma's going to show. So you don't have to learn or memorize this necessarily, but we want to show you what you could do at home with those resources. And specifically, we're going to look at how you can look up the public information about your school budget, with the idea that it's a way to gain more information, to have really productive conversations, to ask maybe more questions of school leadership. And Emma's going to show you one example of what our videos walk you through online.
Great. Okay. So the first thing you're going to do is just go to schools.nyc.gov. You're going to go to find a school. And then this can be a little bit tricky. Sometimes it doesn't really want you to find the school, or it's hard. It has trouble finding it, but we are going to look for a specific school. Oh, look at that. There we go. Okay, so this one is in this district. And you're gonna hit search, and then you'll click on that school. When you get to the schools page, instead of the overview, you can look at the overview. For example, this school has grades 6, 7, and 8 and has special education programming. It's in District 15 in Brooklyn, and this is the school number. So you're gonna go to reports. And once you're in reports, you're gonna go down to the budget and finances. So IBO has put out videos on all of these different.
Is it sharing? Oh yeah.
IBO has put out videos walking through all 5 of these different links, but we're going to focus on 2 specific ones, and then our slides have links out to our videos, or you can just go to our website. So we are going to start with the Galaxy allocation, which is the funding allocation. So you can click on that. This is that school, and then you can see where the funds are coming from. So for example, this school is receiving $41,000 for ARPA academic recovery, for AP Summer Rising, and you can see all of the rest of where their funds are coming from. If you scroll down, you can find their fair student funding, which is that bulk of the allocation. So that's $8.8 million. And TL means tax levy, so that's where it's coming from. So a city tax levy. All right. And you can also download this to Excel, and it'll give you the same information. And then you can look at different fiscal years. One important thing to note is that if you're looking at the current fiscal year, it is not necessarily finished. It may still change. There are a lot of mid-year adjustments, so that's something to keep in mind. So this fiscal year can't necessarily be compared to any of the past ones because it's not finished. All right, and then we will go back to reports, budget and finances, and we'll look at the budget summary. So this is the summary of planned spending. So this spending hasn't necessarily occurred, but this was the budget. So you can look at school teachers and leadership. And then if you scroll down, it gives a lot more specifics. And here we go. OTPS stands for Other Than Personal Services. So you can look at what your schools has allocated for certain items such as educational software, library books, textbooks, and all those good things. And then you can, at the bottom, see the total budget and the total number of positions. That's the total number of full-time equivalent staff. Great, so those are the two main ones. We're gonna look at one other thing, and we're gonna look at the school allocation memorandum. So that's up here. You can go in and click on it. You can go to the current school year, and if you just click on Sam's by numbers, it lists all of them.
And let's just show the list, but not go to this.
Yeah. So this is all of them. You can click through them, and it'll tell you more details on that. Yep.
So I want to be respectful of time because I know you have a lot on the agenda. So we just wanted to also share another resource. If you go back one slide. So that is if you wanted to look at district-wide allocations, there's a link in this PowerPoint that you could check out. You can look at previous fiscal years for the entire district, all of the allocations by school. So we wanted to share that link as well. If you can go to the next one. And then just to give you some information about what we've done on the preliminary budget, if there are questions, we're happy to answer them. We also can follow up at another time, if you go to the next one. So some of the things that IBO has been looking at for this particular budget cycle includes things like, I mentioned the programs funded with federal COVID aid and our estimates for how much additional money the city would need to fully fund those federal programs were they to continue beyond this year. We've also looked at Summer Rising, which is another area that received federal stimulus funds. The city recently added $80 million to the Summer Rising budget for 1 year, but not in out years. That's another program that we're looking at really closely. And as Tina mentioned before, the state class size law, IBO has done our own estimates of how much additional funding would need to be added to hire the number of teachers that we estimate will be needed to be in compliance. Go for it. There's also something called the Program to Eliminate the Gap, which you may have heard in the news as budget reductions or budget cuts. IBO tracks those really closely as well. So in particular, Emma especially is our expert on that. She's done research on the budget for early childhood education and the reductions that have occurred in the last 2 budget cycles and even the year before to the pre-K and 3K budget and also the subsidized childcare budget. So there's a link, but we can also share Emma's report that she did looking at that. We've also looked at the cuts to community schools. There was a restoration of that cut for the community schools, again, for 1 school year, but not for the years going out. So that's something and the kinds of things that IBO is tracking really closely. And we're happy to answer any questions about these things, but I know we're short on time, so we'll leave our business cards out too in case people have more questions for us to follow up.
We can take questions from the public.
Yeah. So let's open it up now to questions. We'll start with people on Zoom. Is there anybody joining us on Zoom who has a question or a comment for the IBO office?
Thank you so much.
Any questions? Not seeing anything. Anybody in person? Yes.
Oh, great.
Do you mind coming up to speak to the microphone? Is that okay?
Or you can yell.
Or yell. Really loud, yeah.
Use the principal voice.
Yeah, just so the people on Zoom can hear.
Okay, I don't have to lead. I'm a principal. And my school is not a Title I school. We have a very high average teacher salary. And I wondered if your office had looked into at all how the funding formula does not work for schools like mine. And we are, every year, find ourselves in a deficit and have to basically beg, borrow, and plead to get needed funding just for mandated services.
Yep.
So, and I know that's an issue at several of my colleagues' schools as well.
Do you happen to be from the school that did the Budget Busters from District 15?
No, but I'd like to team up with them.
I'm curious because we saw those too.
Yeah.
So I think what I can add to that is just that we are very interested in both a couple of things about fair student funding, about those mid-year adjustments and how they can change in school planning, how they can affect school planning as well. We're looking also at fair student funding and some of the ways, one of our team researchers is working on this right now, the intention of equity and promoting equity, and to what extent do we see that actually playing out in the way that schools look. So at this point, I'd say, no, we don't have specific analysis, but I would love to hear more from you as a principal and from any others as well about exactly those like area points that we should look at more specifically in the research, because we don't know to do it unless someone on the ground points us in those directions.
And I've done all the calculations to figure out how many students I need in every class and how many students with IEPs I need in every class to pay for the general ed teacher or the special ed teacher. And basically the math doesn't work. So on every class I'm losing, I hate to put it so bluntly, but I'm losing money essentially. Like money has to be found somewhere to fill in the gaps. So it's a big issue, and I've spent the last 2 summers that I've been a principal, it's only my 3rd year, just advocating for like, how can I get money to actually be able to open the doors of my school in September?
And specifically for staffing is the concern.
It is entirely staffing.
Yeah.
My entire budget goes to staffing.
Right.
Yeah, the current formula
Money
is
I
not
put
taking
through
into consideration the 3 raises that has been received by DC 37 members, you have team members and CSA members. With all those constituencies getting raises, and fair student funding staying at its current level.
Am I speaking a little louder? Sorry.
We want to hear it.
With all the fair student funding current levels that we're at, having the increases in salaries for the 3 different constituencies that work in our school communities all at once simultaneously and consistently going up in the next couple of years will change average salaries for teachers, teacher average salaries. So like if you're a school that has a significantly senior staff, which are veteran teachers who don't leave, which is what we want in the system and we encourage, it costs a lot more money than to fund a school where the teachers are consistently leaving because the average teacher salary is different. Schools are getting allocation for fair student funding, which is constant, but what's changing is the weighted salaries for each staff member. So CSA members, they're getting raises. DC 37 members, who are school aides and other workers in the building, are getting raises, and UFT are getting raises. And consistently as they get raises, even if you stay at the same level of the fair student funding, you're already losing money each year as a result of having to pay salaries that's not being taken into consideration with fair student funding increases.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge, and then with class size reduction, even further, so.
Right. And I think like, this is my plea for more feedback, and maybe offline too, we can follow up, because I think what we have access to is data, but it's very depersonalized data and it doesn't have experiences. And what we really don't have is decision-making. So knowing from principals about what are those decision points is invaluable information for us. So I really appreciate that, and I'd love to maybe follow up afterwards to talk some more.
There were 2 questions on Zoom, and if that's okay, then we can go back to people in person. So the first question, Raphael, I know you've answered some of this in the past, but the question is about how we will become compliant to the class size law, and I'm assuming financially speaking, in terms of the IBO presentation.
Yeah, I'll get into that in my presentation when I talk, but I can tell you that we have until 2027-28 school year or 28 school year to meet class size law mandate by 100%. This current year coming up, we have to meet it by 40%. District 15 has already met it as we're already at 42% this year. So schools aren't going to have to do anything next year. What I've been doing, working with CEC members and also within my team to think about how are we expanding some schools. I will eventually come to CEC at some point and have conversations about whether or not we have to rezone some schools for the purposes of having space in buildings that may not necessarily have space. So there's going to be a lot of conversations, but as of right now, next year we're sitting comfortably because of the fact that we're already at 42% class size reduction. There was another question.
There is another question coming, but did you want to speak on?
Yeah, if I could, if you mind
it's not related to class
going
size,
back
it's
two slides, I think. I just want to point to one more, sorry. There we are. Yeah, so IBO has done an estimate of, and like the superintendent was sharing, that compliance when it'll start to hit. So this isn't for just District 15, this is speaking citywide, but we've done an estimate of what we anticipate the additional teacher hiring costs would be to be in compliance in those rollout phased in years. So our estimate is that the city would need to add to the budget $214 million in 2026 for that fiscal year, 427 for 2027, and then 427, but that's our conservative estimate. We're estimating a little bit higher for 2028. And I just want to say that that is for teacher hiring need. That is not an estimate for capital or space or construction. And we listened really closely to the hearings, the preliminary hearings with the Department of Education, with SCA. And from what I've been hearing, it's very much a plan in progress. They don't yet have an estimate for the capital costs either. So they have their own estimate for teacher costs. It's kind of similar to ours in the total estimated cost. But these numbers that I'm sharing are just for teacher hiring need and additional teachers needed, not accounting for the fact that we have vacancies right now in the school system that we would need to find teachers to fill. So it's both a cost question, I think it's a personnel question for superintendents and principals, and then there's a space question, all of that.
Thank you. So the other question is about the financial impact of the mandated curricula on the ability to be able to roll that out and the budget impacts on schools and their ability to hire staff to meet those different needs.
So when it comes to the curricula, that's a different question. I know that a lot of people think that it's going to cost more in terms of the curricula itself, but when you have a city that's using the same curricula, you can actually bargain, right? And so it's supply and demand. So with the fact that the city is all doing these 3 particular curricula, they're able to now negotiate pricing. So when schools are using what's called core curricula, which is when they select to opt into core curricula, which every school will, whatever is the additional fees for additional materials that are needed, for example, in Wit and Wisdom, decodables, if that's going to be in the core programming. Schools will pay their NISTO money, which is state money for books or textbooks that they're required to use for textbooks. They will be able to use that funding to cover the core curricular. Even though, let's say, and I'm just using average, let's say you only get $25,000 in NISTO money and the core curricular is costing your school $75,000, that's being covered because of the fact that it's part of core curriculum. So when they buy in larger bulk, it costs them a lot less money than if they were to do it from each individual school, which in the past, schools have been able to buy their individual curricula by school that actually costs more money. And in this case, it's actually more cost effective. So hopefully that answers it.
We don't have any.
Are there any other questions from people here in person or anybody else on Zoom? There's somebody, okay, so one more. Isn't it the case that schools will be required to buy new curricula instead of trade books, et cetera, for the classroom?
That's not a district-wide thing. That's a school-to-school thing. Today, you're going to hear from 2 schools that have already have the curricula. So they're not necessarily having to buy brand new curricula all over. They've been using the curricula. A lot of our schools have already been doing that. So that's on a case-to-case basis, depending on which school we're talking about. To make a blanket statement for the district, I can't say that because not every school is in the same place. But you'll hear a little bit today about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how we're going to support schools. Certainly for the trade books, if they're not, and we don't know what's part of the core curriculum, we're supposed to find out by next week. But if it's not part of the curriculum, I've already been working with a particular vendor to give us a district-wide rate to be able to purchase those particular books in the event that they're not part of the entire core curriculum. So we're finding other ways to save money from schools to school, because if we buy in bulk as a district, it's also cheaper. Just remember, we have about 22,000 students in our district. There are districts across the country that have, I found out last week, about 1,000 students. So it's going to be different for us because we're such a large district. We'll be able to buy things in bulk if necessary. But I'm confident that a lot of the materials that we're talking about are going to be added to core curricula.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was really great. We're going to make sure that that presentation is posted on our website so that everybody can access all of those links. I hope everybody at home heard that. We're going to make sure that that presentation is posted on the CEC 15 website so that you can access those links and look at those videos on your own time. So, you know, in the interest of time, you know, given that we had a delay at the start, I'm going to just cede all of my my time. I'm not going to make a presidential speech, but I do want to thank Maria Della Regione, whose school we are in right now. Would you like to come up and say anything?
Welcome, and I just would like to say thank you to Mamoon for providing such a beautiful dinner this evening. So
yes,
welcome.
Thank you to Mamoon. We are having a wonderful Bangladeshi feast tonight. Are we breaking the feast together for Ramadan? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. And we're all sort of breaking it with you. Yeah, we're all breaking our fast tonight. So Ramadan Kareem to you and to everybody who celebrates. And I also want to acknowledge that our many South Asian families are celebrating Dolo Jatra and Holi, the Festival of Colors. And I hope our Jewish families enjoyed their Hamantashen this weekend for Purim. And I will be making my pastiera napoletana this weekend for Easter. So that's what I'll be doing Friday. And now I'm going to turn it over to our superintendent, Rafael Alvarez.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. We're going to get started, and for the sake of time, celebrating those holidays in March, which are Easter, Women's History Month, St. Patrick's Day, Ramadan, as you heard, and Holi, or is it Holi or Holy? Holi, Festival of Colors. And our next slide is just thinking about what's coming up in April as we're celebrating Passover. April is Autism Month, National Poetry Month. We had a little poetry slam with our Equity Congress, so all students participated in celebrating their poetry in terms of equity, and it was a great experience because some principals have already been sending emails about students going back, excited about bringing that same practice that they just did today to their schools. Arab American Heritage Month, as well as Earth Day. Next slide, or 2 slides now. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the district celebrations that we've had, a little bit of summer rising updates so that we're all aware of what's going on. I'm going to bring 2 principals in, one from PS 94 that's doing the HMH curricula, one from PS 107 that's doing the Wit and Wisdom curricula. As you know, we're a unique district in that we're doing 2 curriculars across our district because of the numbers that we have. And I wanted you to get an experience from these schools that are already doing this curricula in their particular schools or implementing this curricula in their school. We want you to get a multifaceted view of how this curriculum is being implemented across our district, which is going to be very different and unique to what other districts are. We are 32 districts across our city, plus the high school superintendencies and D75 and D79. I know that our neighboring districts are doing curricula, and so a lot of our parents have gone to some of their meetings and hearing some things and are bringing the concerns to our CEC, because I know my CEC has shared with me. I just wanted to share with you some of the things that we're doing. So for example, HMH, one of the things that came out is that it's not culturally responsive. As a district, It is, and you're going to see how we're doing that differently. But some of the celebrations, if we go to the next slide. Our project-based learning, thank you, Antonia, and actually Camille Casaretti, our former president, who really brought this to life in our district. They talked about making sure that all of our schools provided not only enrichment, but also highlighting the gifted and talentedness that all students have in our district. And as a result, last year we had our first project-based learning celebration. This year was our second. This year was a little bit more tailored in that schools selected. Every single school participates in project-based learning because we're a project-based learning district. We had local officials. I know Councilmember Avila's people were there. We had NYPD who supported us, and we got to see kids celebrating, but learning and also teaching. And you'll see me in a few pictures because I was learning a lot, including my diet, which one student helped me figure that out. With the next slide, some of the topics that were included was climate change, leadership, carbon footprint, LGBTQ rights, post office study. I'm not going to name them all, but there were some really unique things about how our students were already trying to figure out how to solve our world's problems, because the adults can't solve it right now, so we have to leave it to our kids to solve it when they become adults. And so it was just exciting to see how excited they were about presenting. And then 3 things I'm going to announce here. PS10, 5th grade chess team wins 3rd place in New York State Scholastic Chess Championship in Saratoga. If that's not enough, because the next slide, we also won 2nd place with PS32 as chess champions in the state. And if that's not enough, next slide, 1st place from PS 130 at Brooklyn Lions chess team. So the entire district took 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. It felt like the Olympics all over again. So we were excited about that for our kids, and shout out to them. Women of Distinction Award was presented by State Senator Chu to PS 169 school members. We have Lillian Peng, Julie Guavada, and Cheryl Wong, staff members in our schools that were celebrated and honored as women who work in our community. So we were excited about that particular work. And Senator Chu has been very supportive of everything that we do across this district. So we're happy about that. Next slide. Upcoming events. All right, ready? Annie Jr. is coming. We want everyone to be there. It's Friday, April 12th and Saturday, April 13th. The uniqueness about our Annie Jr. is not just a production of one school performing like you normally see. This is a district-wide initiative. So coming in as superintendent, my goal was to ensure that in alignment with our diversity plan, that we were also ensuring that we were allowing for the diversity to happen in elementary schools before they get to middle schools. Because if our schools are diverse in middle school, our elementary schools need to learn where that diversity is coming from so that when they get into middle school, they actually have an understanding of each other before they actually get there and meet each other for the first time across school lines. And so with the support of our CEC and the diversity plan and moving that initiative, and we're going to be able to report in the next month or so, because that report's almost done finally, it was my goal to bring the district together. We had the have-nots in this district, some people who were focused more than others. We decided to create a theater club for the entire district. So these are students from grades 3 through 12 across all of our schools who work tirelessly on Wednesdays for practice after school at our Brooklyn Arts High School, and our theater teachers who've been doing after school work with these kids. These kids are so excited about this. I'm gonna have to go twice because there's one cast that's going on the 12th and another cast is going on the 13th. I have to show all the kids that I'm supportive of this, but it's 3rd graders being mentored by 12th graders in the same district. It's 8th graders being mentored by, mentoring 5th graders, right? Like the whole experience of kids being represented from all of our district in one show is just exciting for me, and that you're seeing all those things that we're trying to bring to life. Our STEM exploration, which our 5th, 8th, and 11th graders will be on Governor's Island, exploring other science roles outside of being the doctor or the typical science roles that you expect, but seeing how there's deeper fields of the STEM world and giving them exposure to that. And then we do our recognition ceremony June 5th, 4 p.m. This year, we're recognizing our nurses, our secretaries, school-based support team members, paraprofessionals, school aides, and community coordinators, associates. I've already selected the names. The awards are already being designed. So I look forward to that event. Last year, we celebrated our safety agents and some other members. And so it's just, you know, it takes a village to move our schools, and it's not just one member, and certainly a lot of people think teacher and administrators, but some people fail to see the value that cafeteria staff can bring to a child, or that custodian, or that school-based support team, or that secretary that just goes that extra mile with the parent during registration. So we wanted to honor the different people that make up our school community, so we're excited about that. Our next slide, summarizing. Closed yesterday, March 25th. Parents are able to update their applications until the deadline. Elementary schools are going to go from July 2nd to the 16th. The academic portion ends on August 8th, right? Academics are from 8 to 12. The community-based extended day, or what you know as Summer Rising, goes from 12 to 6. For middle schools, it's from the 2nd to the 8th. They don't have that extended time, and their CBO extended time goes from 12 to 4. I just realized we're translating and I'm speaking fast, so let me slow down just a little bit. Next slide. I want to be clear so that we all understand, because I get this every year and I understand where people are, but please note that just because you didn't get a seat doesn't mean you're not still able to get a seat. Oftentimes, parents register, place their kids in, and they decide to move. They decide not to go to the Summer Rising. A lot of things happen, so there's sometimes seats always available at the end. But students will be placed based on preferences, prioritizing promotion endowed students and siblings, students in 12-month programs and siblings, students in temporary housing, students in foster care and their siblings, and students enrolled already in the community-based organizations affiliated to the summer site and their siblings. You know I'm a little crazy in this district, so if the next slide, you'll already see which schools are going to where they're affiliated, and thanks to my principals, we already have all the principals for our district. We also have all of our assistant principals for our district, but we don't have it on this slide because the application ends next week, so they still have time to apply. But we already know who they're going to be. These are the sites. I listened to the Sunset Park community. They wanted another site open. I listened to the two principals. They wanted another site open, so we opened another site. And so PS1 is the added site. Our middle schools were at 88 last year. Because of construction at the school, we're moving it to 51 this year. We're also moving the two middle schools that were placed at the high school with Borum Hill High School. We're moving those two middle schools to 51, but the high schools will still stay. So 497, Borum Hill High School and Brooklyn High School of the Arts will be together. The other change is that K136, Dewey Middle School location with housed with Sunset Park Prep Middle School, will all be going to the same location. They normally go to Sunset Park High School, but for other reasons, Sunset Park High School is not hosting this year. So we're hosting it at 136, and Principal Jen Spalding is going to take that. So we have some headliners here who have done this before and know what they're doing. So we're confident in our summer school program. Next slide. Now I want to bring up a little bit of a curriculum rollout and zooming in a little bit. I'm going to bring two principals up. The first one is Principal Christina Gonzalez. She's going to be talking about HMH. Please note that the schools that have dual language programs in Spanish, the whole school is doing HMH across our district. The schools that don't have a dual language program in Spanish will all be doing the Wit and Wisdom curricula, and we'll have Joanna Cohen speak to that. So Principal Gonzalez.
I go here? Oh. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Cristina Gonzalez. I'm the principal of PS 94. I think some of you already know me. So in this conversation, I have two goals for you. Where do I look? In that camera. So in my conversation, I have two goals for you. The first one is for you to gain some sort of internal peace in understanding what your kids, your children are going to be doing if they happen to be in an HMH school. And the second goal is for me to reiterate that you see the emphasis on student-centered approach for District 15. When it comes to the rollout of the curriculum of HMH, we may get in trouble when we state that we're doing it with integrity and not fidelity, because these programs may be designed by a very knowledgeable group of people, but they have patterns or characteristics of children in mind. They don't have my son Noah. They have certain characteristics of Noah in mind. So at the end of the day, for it to be culturally responsive and identity welcoming to all of the students that we serve at District 15, adaptation has to happen. So in the top corner, I put the basics of the curriculum. So if you look at K through 5, in HMH, they have, kindergarten is a little different because they have shorter modules, but it's about 10 modules per grade. They have a cohesive planning, phonics, reading, and writing program, right? In which the model is not uncommon for us, which is a short mini lesson and then a small group instruction. Right? If you think about the strategic planning of that design, that alone allows for adaptation, differentiation, and intervention, okay? Then we have some supports of students. And the thing with HMH is that not only, and I'm sorry that I'm speaking too fast, but I know we're all tired and we gotta get going, but the support of the students, they have the phonics program comes with that piece of, if I am unpacking the language, I'm gonna the thought behind it is provide books where kids get an opportunity to practice those word patterns or vowel consonant combinations that they're being exposed in the classrooms, right? And then we have the anchor charts, the weekly bundles, which are downloadable or printable or in printout. Principals can choose what instrument to use, where they have the opportunity to do practice fluency, in which they can practice the skill, whether in a small group instruction or at home, or whatever the principal decides to do, because in District 15, there's autonomy in the decision process, because we have a lot of trusting and knowledge in what we know works best for our community. They have a writer's notebook that aligns the graphic organizers, and it is a skill-based program, which is what has allowed me to make it a culturally responsive curriculum. So we can divorce from this idea that there's a script and my teachers are all saying the same language, okay? That is not the case. And my school is in Sunset Park, 6th Avenue, between 50 and 51st. Just write me an email and we'll host you so that you can see it in action. So why HMH was something that the principal advisory and the leadership in District 15 consider. And for me, I have dual language in Chinese and dual language in Spanish. I often say that 94 is a language school. It's a PBL language school. This idea of explicit instruction is not new. It is not new, it's new at scale. But we have been understanding that we can demystify how the language works. So the thing with, one of the benefits of this curriculum and why Superintendent Alvarez pitched for having it is because it has this linguistic approach. So it's already designed in Spanish and in English, but it's not a direct translation. It's an adaptation of the languages, and it provides tools for teachers that addresses the meta-linguistic connections between the languages. So as the teachers are teaching in a dual language program, they are understanding and exposing the children as to why that works that way. We're not here trying to help. We're not here making them guess. We're telling them, this is the grammar structure, this is how it looks in English, this is how it looks in Spanish. And through PBL, we're gonna allow you to have an opportunity to practice. So we're gonna foster your linguistic identity by allowing you to express yourself in both languages. The goal is bilingualism. So at the end of this, when the students get to 94, in kindergarten, by the time they get to 5th grade, they are bilingual. And I have the data. I can show it to you because by 2nd grade, my students that are fluent in Cantonese by second grade, they actually are Mandarin speakers, readers and writers. So this is one of the benefits of HMH. This focus of integrating project-based learning allows us for a better sustainability of vocabulary acquisition because they're learning content-based words that they're using in their research, in their learning, when they're presenting, and we have the responsibility to teach content. And it's very easy in a school where, like mine, 50% of my students, and I have about 876 families, I think, today, 50% of my students are dominant of a language other than English, so they're else. 70% of my students are either else or former else. So I have to have the responsibility of unpacking the language, but I also want them to know content. Because when they are at the college level, they're not talking to anybody about phonemic awareness or letter sound combinations. It is my hope that they're talking about climate change, that no one that comes from 94 states that the earth is flat. So content is important, it's necessary, and it's relevant to the kids that we serve. So how do we allow them to have and develop their own voice? So, like I said, there's a mini lesson and then there is a small group instruction. The principals align their practice according to their instructional foci. For 94, one of our foci is small group instruction, because in every classroom we have a range of abilities and needs. So a mini lesson misses many of us. So the idea is to use different forms of assessments, the screeners, anecdotals, interviews, anything that allows us to really to get to know the student, to then place them in the small groups that they actually are at their zone of proximal development, which is, if I can give you a visual, is almost like when you're going up the ladder and somebody's holding you to the next step. Okay, so the idea is to guide them in their educational journal to go to the next step, right? So how do we break from the script? So word work is activities where children are familiar with the print, get familiarized with the print and the usage of a word. This is aligned to the project-based learning. So if you look at the right bottom corner, their HMH has projects in every module that are either aligned to social studies or aligned to STEM. But there is always this opportunity to make it interdisciplinary. We can adapt them. Not only can we adapt them, and in this we have worked really close with, we started with Goldie Mohammed, now I have to say the Cassandra and Cornelio. Minors through the Minor Collective have been instrumental if helping us work through create this democracy in learning and allow the curiosity of the children to be embedded in the project-based learning. So that's one of the work. So the word work is not a worksheet. It's really tailored and words chosen so that the kids gain independence within the process of the content that they're being exposed to, okay? The reading corner. Some districts just stay with the mentor text that is suggested by HMH. Well, that really didn't work for 94. We are a culturally responsive school, and we have very many different kinds of students with their backgrounds and their interests. So we have had, in the past 2 years, work with our coaching team and our teachers in finding mentor texts where kids can be represented as well as being relevant to the needs of where they are learning now, okay? So the reading corner may have a decodable, right? Or may have what the children need to learn. And then you may wonder, well, Christina, how does that work in kindergarten when they're learning the CVC sounds, right? Well, we allow ourselves to use digital resources for that. And we actually allow the students and the teachers to actually work with digital libraries. And then they can actually be exposed or read with a teacher or through an iPad in the topics that they need. I know it's more than 3 minutes. The same thing goes with vocabulary. The creativity corner has to do with, reader's theater. So HMH has a reader's theater suggestion in their modules. For us, the Reader's Theaters is an initiative that we respect highly because we know that the theater promotes all four modalities of language. So what we do is that we prepare ourselves with our theater department meets with our great teachers, and together they plan the Reader's Theater piece that is at times aligned with the content of the project base. So you see there is echoes and repetition of what the kids are embedded all throughout the day. So the writing is also very similar. So there is choice in everywhere. If you can go back to the other slide. I want to give you, not that one. We can just move. Yeah. I want to show you, this is a second grade, no, the one before. This is a second grade Chinese duo. So I want to give you a visual of what's going on. In the bottom right corner, you see students doing theater, and you see them working. If you were to see more, they would have roles. The middle table has all of the tools that the students may need, and they get up and they go and they research and they get it. There you can see my teacher in the back in a small group, working with a small group. That could be any skill base, okay? Then we have, I have a paraprofessional working with another group, and then we have that reading corner. I have 2 children just reading what they want to read about, and then I have other students doing research for PBL. Before I move on, I want to talk to you about assessments, because if we are a school that respects the identity and the learning styles of the children, assessments are also modified. So HMH provides weekly quizzes, end of module quizzes. They're all skill-based, and teachers have K through 5. So let's say they have to modify it to, if they're in 3rd grade, they have to modify it for a kid that is approaching grade level. They actually have the ability to go to that grade and look for the skill and see what kind of quiz. But in addition to that, we don't believe in quizzes as the only method of evidencing mastery of learning. We have project-based learning to help us with that. We have interviews with the students. Kids interview each other. We have developed, thanks to the mentoring of Superintendent Alvarez and Deputy Lancilotto, we have developed instruments that actually foster students to monitor their own learning. So it is work, but it's work that actually brings joy. Because by having this radical understanding that children are first, their identity, their curiosity, and what they like to do when they get to school, we are able to actually adapt the curriculum in an ethical way. So I'm gonna close by saying, and you can, let me just show what's the other 2 slides. That's 2 small groups. One is addressing story elements and character traits, and she's using her own book, that's a Chinese duo. And in the other one is a game of vocabulary, fostering vocabulary, and she has the word creative here. So she's getting clues from her classmates as to what to do, as to what to get that word. If you think about differentiation and intervention, teachers have the ability to create the words that the kids not only need, but are also we can anticipate some of the vocabulary that they're going to have in their learning experiences, and then foster this collaborative learning of new vocabulary. You can pass it to the last one. You can pass it as reader theory. They have a lot of fun. They love it. This is one, I picked one of the project-based learnings that are in HMH that we adapted. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about the fostering of identity. So the first one is a kindergarten PBL of Who Am I? I am unique, so they developed this book. We actually took it at a different level because we wanted kids to know about each other's culture. So the book is about a friend. So they get to interview the friends. So you see all the components of fostering all four modalities of language and also elevating our collaboration and our cultures at 94. If I walk you through it, first grade did how animals live, and they get to create where they want to study. And they do, they study animal adaptation as per the climate or where they are. Third grade created a disaster preparedness campaign that's very relevant after what we've been through, okay? Second grade did a PBL leadership where they organize character campaigns and they create their own books, or they can pick a book that they want and they can try to sell to the audience why that character should be voted on. And it becomes a whole grade election, okay? When they learn about a universal vote, the secret vote, campaigning, counting, is really about democracy in learning. Fourth grade did an adaptation. That's the one that we actually presented in our PBL fair this year, when they choose different characters. There's very stereotypical about villains and grade and things like that. They actually challenge that and they create their own filming and production. And fifth grade did the effects of deforestation, in which some people did a poster, others did a PSA, others sent letters to politicians and that sort of thing. So I just want to reassure you, and you can come to see it because many schools have done it from the district. We respect the families and the kids that we serve. We create relevance in education. We are very skilled in understanding that language must be unpacked, but then we have to plan for activities that provide joy and that kids can grow and take to middle school so that content is always in their minds and hearts. Thank you.
I just had a quick question. Do we want to take questions for Principal Gonzalez?
Up to you.
Before moving to?
Up to you. I'll come join.
I don't know.
I see some questions already in
Or
the
should we
chat.
go somewhere else?
I think we should probably present all of it.
Yeah, I was just wondering.
Yeah, I think present all of it.
Okay.
Okay, hello everyone. Thank you, Principal Gonzalez. I'm going to try to talk a little bit less, though I also can talk quite a bit about this work because I think it's so important. Last school year, PS 107, which is located in Park Slope, was named one of the Department of Education's structured literacy pilot schools by the Chancellor. That came with some additional funding, and this assisted our eventual rollout of Wit and Wisdom. So I'm not sure how familiar you all are with this graphic that's up on the board. Can you give me a little like thumbs up if you've seen it before? I'm seeing some. This is Scarborough's reading rope. It indicates all of the critical skills that children need to master to become skilled readers. So we have at 107 have been studying this in depth for the last year and a half. And we have, if you could just go to the next, there's a little bit of animation in my slide. During the 2019 through 2021 school year, we focused on the lower strands, the word recognition strands of Scarborough's reading rope. And that includes what you think of as phonics, phonemic awareness, sight word recognition. We had all of our teachers, our special education teachers trained in Orton Gillingham, and then I arrived as principal in the 2021-22 school year and continued that work and helped empowered some of our teacher leaders to train their colleagues so that we had explicit phonics instruction every single day in K to 2. Then the following school year, which was last year, the 22-23 school year, you can, sorry, you can go to the next. Oh, did they all? Not to the next slide. Did all of the little, okay, sorry, my little circles popped up. So now, last year we started building our professional knowledge about what the science of reading is and what these language comprehension strands are and what we need to do to make sure that we're following the research, we're using evidence-based instruction at PS 107. Because of a $50,000 investment from our local assembly member, 2/3 of our teachers were able to take a course, a graduate level course, essentially a literacy methods course, the literacy methods course that many of us never got in graduate school. So by the end of last school year, my teachers were really ready to, even though we're in a phase 2, District 15 is a phase 2 district, they were ready to implement the new curriculum. And Raphael is not here right now, but oh, there he is. But I was like bothering him every day, like, do we know what curriculum we're using? Do we know what curriculum we're using? And I was really happy to learn that the district was able to use 2 different curricula. I'm very excited about Wit and Wisdom. You can go to the next slide. One of the things that, oh, sorry. Yeah, so one of the things that I really liked about Wit and Wisdom is that it includes a wide range of authentic texts. We were a Teachers College Units of Study school. Just a little backstory on me. I went to Teachers College. I went to Teachers College because of reading and writing workshop. I was very much a devotee of the workshop model. However, over my 20 years in the DOE, working with a range of different populations, realized that something wasn't working for a large number of our students. So these are just some of the things. I don't need to read all of them to you, just to talk about our rollout. This is our first year implementing Wit and Wisdom, so that has been our focus this year. Our instructional focus is entirely related to the implementation of Wit and Wisdom, and we have been providing professional learning to our teachers. We haven't done any evaluative observations unless requested on Wit and Wisdom lessons. We've done a lot of walkthroughs and collegial intervisitations. Go to the next slide. So I just want to tell you a few things that we love about Wit and Wisdom. There's amazing content. The kids are so excited about what they're learning. And every time I go into a classroom, I'm excited about what I'm learning because these are things that I never learned when I was in school. They love being able to develop really deep background knowledge about a wide range of topics. Teachers also, I've been so pleasantly surprised to see that I didn't expect that we would be able to do many projects this year. Sorry, Raphael. But teachers have just taken the initiative to connect projects to the work that they're doing. It's not exactly project-based learning, but you can see a giant squid that one of my 3rd grade classes built. They labeled all of the parts of the squid, which was a part of their unit on oceans. Class 3rd grade has been also studying space. The 2nd module, they've studied space exploration, and they created these space-related board games with facts about space, and they taught other classes to play them. So kids are really being able to use the content that they're gaining and create their own, be very creative with the projects that they're making. They are really, I am incredibly impressed with how well our kids are learning reading comprehension skills by using them with quality text. It's an incredibly unifying experience, actually, to have a class where the kids are all spending a lot of time on one text, one shared text that they all know very, very well. The vocabulary development in our students is just staggering. And there's an enormous benefit we're finding from students being able to read the same text multiple times, but for different purposes. And this is a big part of what Wit and Wisdom is like. There are also so many student-centered opportunities for student-centered discussion. Kids as young as kindergarten are having Socratic seminars. And the kids, as they are getting older, I am really blown away by the quality of conversation that they're having. And we all know that the oral language supports them as they develop their written language. And we're also seeing just incredible writing coming out of our kids after just a half a year of implementing Wit and Wisdom. Next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about writing. So you can see this is something that a second grader would have written last year. They were doing a book on, the second graders often write all about books. This book was all about, they pick a topic, something that they know a lot about, right? I taught countless numbers of kids to write these books over the years. This is a book about soccer balls. This child knows a lot about soccer balls. And you can read it. The Nike ball is the best ball. It has stripes. It is really cool. It is the greatest, best ball in the whole entire world. In this chapter, I will teach you about the Premier League ball. The Premier League is a famous ball. It is a very famous ball. It is the best ball ever in the whole entire world. It is so easy to kick, okay? Very cute, right? But it's lacking in some content there. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see what we are seeing now in second grade. Kids were able to choose about how plants or animals were important to the indigenous people of the plains. These are the ways how indigenous peoples used animals to survive. First, the bison provided food for the indigenous people. The indigenous people used bison horns for farm tools and toys. Finally, the indigenous people used bison hides to make moccasins, dresses, teepees, and can't read that word. I hope you now know how indigenous people use animals to survive. So they're learning how to write topic sentences, they're writing concluding sentences, their writing is filled with evidence, actual evidence that they have learned deeply. They're incredible. I mean, I wish I could show you videos of some of our kids who were really, really, really struggling for years and how engaged they are and how their writing has just blossomed with this curriculum. Next slide, please. So these are some of the things that we're working on. No curriculum is perfect, and we know that we have a lot to work on. First, we need to further differentiate tasks to address student needs. We are already doing that, but we need to understand the curriculum a little bit better to figure out how we can really consistently do that day after day, you know, modifying up, modifying down a bit. Finding time for purposeful independent reading. This is something that is incredibly valuable for kids who are proficient decoders. For kids who are not proficiently decoding, the research is clear, independent reading is not valuable. So I know there's a lot of talk about independent reading and when we're going to do it. We are working on making sure that it's really purposeful. We're making sure that our kids are decoding fluently before we're giving them extended periods of time to read independently. Though virtually all of our classrooms have set aside time for independent, I shouldn't say virtually all of our classrooms have set aside time for independent reading this year, where kids are choosing their own books from our classroom libraries. Wit and Wisdom lessons are quite long. At the beginning of the year, our teachers were finding that they were taking sometimes 2-3 days to teach one lesson. So we have been working with a staff developer and have really distilled the most essential parts of every lesson, and we're further refining that. And as we look ahead to planning for next year, we're going to really calendar that out so that we know that we are, with the end in mind, we're going to be doing backwards planning. And I think assessment is a piece where our teachers have to really trust that the existing assessment tools that we do have, both our screeners and our secondary diagnostics, are giving them a good idea of how students are performing, because we're no longer using running records, which research also shows is basically as reliable as flipping a coin to tell you how well students are doing in reading. We are, we're just building that understanding of how these new assessment tools work, and that they do tell us how our kids are doing. And our kids are doing well so far. I think that's what I'll say. Okay.
And I'm just going to use 1 minute to finalize the conversation. I'm not going to go through all the slides that are left. I'm going to go to this one particular slide, which is the next slide. So in an effort to support our district holistically, we have this here. There's a folder where you're going to be able to see it translated into Arabic, Chinese, Mandarin, Spanish, the English version is there, as well as Bengali or Bangla, right? Those translations are there for this strategic guide. I'm not going to go through the other pages, but this is going to be a clear understanding for parents what this all means, what the science of reading means, what the science of writing means, how are we strategically supporting schools in our district, how are we strategically going to be supporting parents in our district. There will be professional development around this, and so if you just click on the next slide really quickly, you'll just see simple view of reading, so you're going to be able to see this text. Those of you, Nicole, if you can just throw it in the chat as well, so those of them have it there. I have some hard copies here. Next slide. I'm not going to go into the details, just next slide. I just want you to get an idea of what it actually looks like. When I talk about data, data is what drives instruction, okay? The curriculum does not drive instruction. So whatever curriculum you have is a tool. And a tool is meant to be used when necessary to be used. And so across our district, we're utilizing it as a tool. We're using the data to create the small groups instructions that you heard Christina Gonzalez talk about. You heard Joanna talk about how they're supporting specific content area supports, but also using decodables as a tool to support learning how to read and independent reading as well. I want you to be understanding that when I talk about multi-tiered system of support, another data tool that we use to support curriculum decisions or how we're going to approach instruction is by looking at the whole child. So we don't forget who the child is, because that's a data point. Knowing that an entire class is not interested in the arts and forcing them to learn about the arts is just going to belabor your lesson, right? And so thinking about where kids are in each individual class, this is where there's the flexibility of our schools to be able to implement different tools to support kids in learning. The next slide. Reminding us that the foundational skills are that phonemic awareness, phonics, and then it cross sections with fluency. And then what the curricula is actually going to cover for the most part is your fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension, right? PAF, Foundations, Heggerty are the different ways that we as a district are supplementing support for those additional foundational skills that are necessary. Next slide. We use the universal screeners. I know a lot of people are not happy about the universal screeners, but the universal screeners provides a lot of data. It gives us a lot of information. It gives us insight on whether or not teachers are making impact with students' outcomes, for example, from beginning of the year to the middle of the year. It provides us information on where kids are struggling so that we could tailor that small group instruction in our classrooms. Schools are using these data points to actually now target individual students in Tier 1 instruction to support students in the classroom so that they don't have to leave the classroom to get that additional instruction. These two different screeners are helping us do that. And for the first time in a very long time, District 15 is actually focusing on its marginalized student population, which means these are the students that historically have not made gains and we have not been able to close the achievement gap for. Because we're such a high-performing district, we boast ourselves on how well we do, but when you look deeper into the data, we're missing the boat when it comes to certain students who need to be targeted historically. You can look at data for the past 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Okay, so what I want to say about that is what Nicole put in the chat, and many of you will have copy here, is a version for you to actually understand for yourself what our plan is around literacy. You heard Christina talking about doing the work with integrity versus fidelity. The reason why is because the best educators understand that the curricula is a tool, and while we're going to implement the tool, there are going to be decisions that have to be made at individual school levels because no curricula fits the need of any one individual student. It won't. There is no curricula out there that will meet every single student's need. So it's our job as the educators to make adaptations, as you heard Christina talking about, and you also heard Joanna talking about in her first year of Wit and Wisdom, and she's to the core about Wit and Wisdom, but there have been flexibility and changes to align with our district priorities and needs. You're going to see all of that in the strategic literacy plan. Those of you who need research and want to see what the research is saying about it, there are several links that you can click on There are links to the different curriculums that you can click on. We made this as transparent as possible for families to do the work of looking at what they want to know their children are going to be doing in a classroom, knowing the modules, knowing how we look at it as a district. I want you to know that you'll even see the shifts there. You're not seeing that we're getting rid of this to do this. You're seeing here's some shifts we're making in practice, and here's why, because the research says this is what we need to do for our children. That's it. Next slide is just, I think, Q&A. Well, I'm going to skip that. Go ahead. Next. Go back one slide. This slide, we had a workshop for parents around the milestones and connecting them to how we use the universal screeners as a similar mindset of milestones. So when you think of children from birth to 3 years old, there are certain milestones that parents are looking at to see if their children are meeting. And when they don't, they talk to their pediatricians and talk to the skilled professionals that help them figure out how to do that. So for the first time, what age is a child supposed to crawl? What age is a child supposed to walk? What age does a child say its first words or should be saying their first words? These are milestones. These are not exact, right? These are science. But there's a range. And when you pass that range, there are things that as a parent you have to do to support. That's how we use the universal screeners, identifying where our kids are and identifying, is the child where the milestone they should be as a first grader middle of the year? And when they're not, this tool, the universal screener, helps us identify where the gaps are and how to plan for small group instruction to address that milestone of an early childhood child's trajectory. And so this professional development that you're going to see April 9th is to address that, to show you what those are and show you what the value is of the actual screener that is science-based, evidence-aligned, and evidence-based. And if you don't know the difference, evidence-aligned is the research says to do this. Evidence-based is the research has done it for 3 or 4 years, and here's the results of that evidence. And so the universal screeners are evidence-aligned, and the results of it have been showing to us as a district already evidence-based data that this is actually moving our kids in our schools because teachers are more focused on the specific needs of students. And so I'll stop there.
I have to go, unfortunately, which I don't. Vanessa, do you mind, because you can see the chat ticking over the. Sorry.
That's okay.
So we're gonna start with questions from the public here because we have a lot on the chat. Okay, let's do translators first. Do we have anybody in the translation rooms with questions?
None of anybody in the Chinese line.
There's no questions in the Spanish line as well.
Nobody in Bangla line.
Okay, thank you. Anyone here in the room? Go ahead. If you can come. I can barely hear you. Thank you. Hello. Not yet.
How the curriculum adjusts to allow for IEP and ICT classrooms?
Excellent question. As you heard from the school leaders here, and they can attest to this, it's the adjustments are made because the curricula, again, what I've seen happening is that there are certain districts that may be rolling out and are trying to do with fidelity first. From our perspective as a district, we're a different district and there's different needs in our district. And so from our perspective, we're looking at doing things with fidelity, but doing it with integrity first and identifying 1 or 2 aspects that we're going to try to move as a district and get well at it. You can't get well at everything because if you're a master of everything, you're a master of nothing, right? If you try to master everything, you're going to be a master of nothing. So you want to master something. And how do we go about doing that? We try to address the actual curricula from the evidence-based approach that they're taking, which is a knowledge-based approach curricula, where explicit teaching is happening compared to allowing kids to just explore and figure it out for themselves and then support if necessary. So this is evidence-based, knowledge-based developing, right? And so from the perspective here is teachers are going to be able to adapt. There's an expectation that we're going to be adapting. Because again, what I said to you earlier is that the data informs the instruction, not the curriculum. The curriculum is the tool. The data helps us say, these are things our kids need. We have to cover this, but these are some of the things that we have to address. So I saw an example of that at one of our schools this morning at a PPO visit, where I walked into a classroom and there are some students that are not on the grade level, and students are being supported in small group instruction that's targeting what the data is saying they need during their instructional time. So they're doing a whole unit on something. The kids were still able to do the work in the unit, but addressing the gaps that they were facing in foundational skills. So they were working on some word work, but still connecting to their unit that they were studying at the time, so that it didn't take away from them learning the content. And so those are the types of things I'm expecting to see across our schools. Those are the things I'm going to be looking for. Yeah.
Any other questions here from the public? Okay, we're gonna move on to the Zoom. Do we have volume here to hear anyone on Zoom in case? So if we have questions from the public okay, in Zoom, we have Lauren, that's the first person. I'm gonna ask you to unmute.
Hello. I'm a parent in District 15. My child goes to the Brooklyn New School. He had originally been in District 22, and he had experienced HMH, and his experience was not positive. Actually, my child was in kindergarten, and because of these, and I understand it's a different district and it could have been applied differently, but I want to share my son's experience because I feel it's really important for this district to consider as they move forward with this unknown. And my son went to school, and these 90-minute blocks impacted their school day to the point where there was no play in the kindergarten day. There was no choice time. There was no agency. There was no opportunities for my child to make some decisions about what he was going to be doing or learning that day. And it made a strong impact on his behavior. And we started seeing negative behaviors at school, negative behaviors home. They started increasing in frequency and duration. He started coming home and crying and saying, I don't know how to learn. And this was a kid who is joyful and curious, and we weren't seeing that child anymore. We see him again. He's now in a District 15 school that has a strong curriculum that is, teacher created, and he comes home happy, he's curious, he's learning, he's making more academic connections than he was. Mm-hmm. So I'm grateful for that. My concern is looking forward, looking at particularly wit and wisdom, and just mandates in general, I think, don't necessarily acknowledge what was going well and what is and was working in a school. I feel like that the city made this decision sort of in reaction to a news article, and yes to the science of reading, but I feel like that there's other opportunities for that science to be brought into things that are already happening well in the school. And I feel that I'm concerned that this particular curriculum ignores the cultures and the uniquenesses of the actual children and families they are serving, that there's a lot of talk from teachers around how there's a lack of cultural responsiveness in the curricula, that they don't feature, the majority of the books feature white characters, and it's a white-centric voices as well.
Yeah. I thank you for bringing this to my attention. I am familiar with BNS. I know Principal Castellucci. I know where her concerns were around this particular curricular as well. And as I said, we're coming into it. Let me step back for a second. any educator or any field that you've ever been, the natural instinct for a human is to fear anything that's going to be new. It's just a natural trait of all of us as human beings. And I hear certainly the experience that your child had in District 22, having been a former principal in District 22. What I can say is that we're not trying to take that approach in D15. It's the reason why you're going to be able to look at the strategic literacy plan, and you're going to be able to see some of the informed decisions that school leaders and staff members are going to take to think about how they're making adjustments to the curricula, right? When you talk about the text, that's the reason why you heard Christina Gonzalez up here, principal of PS 94. All of her population is Black or brown, right? And the curricula wasn't as culturally responsive. She brought in the books and the materials to actually do that particular work. That's what we're expecting our leaders to do in year one. I know that they've gone to centralized training around the 90-minute block. That's going to look different at some schools, right? And the reason why that's going to look different is because of, depending on your size of your school, you might have to change the prep schedule. You might have to break up the literacy block. There are a lot of factors that are going to be impacted by each individual school, which is why we're saying the curriculum is a tool. I want to restate that again, that the curriculum is a tool that's supposed to help using the science of reading, which is a proven tool to help children learn how to read. Many of the other tools that were created aren't proven or based, and while they make children happy, it may not necessarily make children be able to learn how to read, and we're charged as a system to do both. We have to make children happy, but we also have to be able to get them to read. And so what I'm charging our school leadership to do is to look at the actual curricula, think about where it fits in with some of the things that they've been doing that actually has been working. And a lot of our schools are rolling out their PD plans as we speak, working on them, so that we're providing professional development for their school leaders on how to use the data to help inform the decisions that they're going to make around the curricula they're going to be implementing next year. So I know, for example, BNS is a really big project-based learning school. As a matter of fact, Diane Castellucci helps lead the project-based learning across our district in terms of the committee that works on it. And I know what work they do at their particular school. And I know that she's going to be able to find ways to integrate the Wit and Wisdom curricula at her particular school to continue to expand on how we're helping students learn how to read. Because what you know about your individual student, I know about the data at her particular school when it comes to certain students still struggling how to read. And so that's the work that we're going to work on, and she has an amazing staff there that's really, like, I find very highly qualified to be able to actually support students how to read. And so what we're doing is we're seeing which components within the Wit and Wisdom that can be embedded in the school, where areas of weakness that the current school may have in those particular areas to support students how to read.
I mean, I thank you. And I also do want to say I don't want a baby to be thrown out with the bathwater, which is what I think this mandated curriculum has done, because there is a lot to be said about the science of how humans learn, and play is at the center of that. And unfortunately, there's a trend where it's becoming smaller and smaller, and it's not about it being fun. It's not about it being joyful. It's about brain building. It's about the neural cortex. It's about being able to take in new information and emotionally regulate. And I'm concerned that a 90-minute block of literacy is, I'm just going to say off the front, I know that it's not developmentally appropriate. And I should have also, shared a little bit that I'm also an educator. And I've taught for 24 years. And I've seen how this impacts children, not just my own child, but other people's children as well. And I'm a believer of Campbell's law that, kind of talked about why Race to the Top from Obama and No Child Left Behind failed was really because the amount of focus on achievement tests actually impaired and didn't improve educational outcomes.
I'm going to agree with everything you said except for the last part. Nowhere am I talking about tests. What I am saying, I am agreeing that children need a balance of learning while also learning to socialize, which is part of the play that's necessary. So I don't disagree with you in everything that you stated. I think that the tests, though, are indicators to us whether or not we're meeting the mark as it relates to supporting students to be able to learn how to read. And that's a necessary tool that helps us identify if what we're doing is right and if what we're doing needs to get better. And that's a tool that we use as administrators to identify how to improve practice so that we can actually provide more outcomes for students. Because certainly as a parent who's as extremely involved as you, we may have other families that may not necessarily have that ability to do so, may lack language, may lack the resources, may lack a lot of things that from our perspective as educators, we're required to be able to support all students. And I think that this approach to making sure that we're aligned to the science of reading is the approach we have to take so that we ensure that our marginalized population of students across our city, which is a larger number than we think, are being addressed in being able to learn how to read. Because fundamentally, without being able to learn how to read, are where multiple opportunities for children are lost by the time they get into high school and ready for college and career readiness. We have far too many Black and brown students at the college level who have to take remedial courses who are least fortunate already and now having to pay for college, additional funding, to pay for even more because they have to take remedial classes because they're not prepared for college readiness, right? And so I hear what you're saying. I don't disagree with you. I'm 100% on board with what you're saying. I don't expect schools to take that away. Another school in my district that's doing that, they started Wit and Wisdom, and PS10 is still using plain kindergarten. And I don't have a problem with that. So I just want to be clear that I'm 100% on board with you when you're saying that. So I agree.
Thank you, Lauren. Rayhan has her hand up. I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Thanks, Vanessa. I'm really grateful to Lauren for providing her experience with HMH and in District 22. I think it's really important that we, it's great that we have been phasing in this concept so that we have an opportunity to look deeply at what is going on with the schools that have been part of phase one and have implemented these curricula already. I would urge that our district request that we can pause and take the time to do a thorough qualitative evaluation of how phase one went. In particular, District 19, which is mandated to use Wit and Wisdom for phase one. I think we need to really talk with teachers, students, and families in District 19 to hear exactly what is going on in those schools and what is working and what is not working. What I'm hearing today from the two principals who presented, which I was really grateful that they were giving us time, and I'm grateful to CEC 15 for giving our community time to hear about these curricula before they start in September. But what I am hearing is that the good things that are going on in spite of these curricula. I'm not hearing what is happening that is helpful having these curricula. Superintendent Alvarez, you did mention that we need to get kids reading and foundational literacy skills are important. And you talked about the science of reading. We are aware that these curricula are not science of reading. They are not phonics programs. They don't do that. That's not the reason these curricula are being implemented in our schools. Teachers were using phonics before if they chose to, and they can continue to use phonics now if they choose to. They didn't have to use them before. They don't have to use them now. We would have to have all other programs in place to implement the phonics instruction if we want to do that in addition to using Wit and Wisdom and HMH into reading in our schools. The question I have is that my understanding—
Rayhan, and before you ask your question, can I just address your statement? With all due respect, I disagree. Number one, District 19 is not the same district as 15. They're very different districts as they serve different demographics. For example, District 19
should not have been the phase one pilot for it because we need to hear from schools that are using it.
I was respectful to you to listen. I would appreciate if you give me that same courtesy.
I wasn't done talking when you decided to speak, so.
I asked you if I could speak to your
go ahead.
question. I just want.
Go ahead, continue to interrupt me, it's fine.
No, you know what? I'll listen to everything you have to say and then I'll answer after the
Okay, so my question is that my understanding from talking with families in other districts that are using these curricula is that it's impossible to not follow them with fidelity, which is something that both of the principals raised when they were talking about them, is that they had to modify them in order to make them appropriate for the kids in the classroom, for the range of experiences in the classroom, and to try to retain the things that we love about our schools: project-based learning, doing fun projects, making the instruction interesting. But what I'm hearing from schools that have been using them is that there's embedded assessment as part of these curricula, and that it's impossible to not follow these curricula with fidelity. And so I am wondering whether the teachers in District 15 that are using it right now in these 3 schools are following it with fidelity and using those embedded assessments, or are they able to not do those assessments? And will our schools starting this fall, if it is implemented this fall, will they be required to do these constant embedded digital assessments, or can they just avoid those without the assessments?
When it comes to the actual assessments, I cannot answer that directly now, as schools are working on developing how they're going to implement the rollout of the curricular. In terms of phase 1, different from phase 2, which is why I opted to be a phase 2 and not a phase 1, I needed the full year to actually look and do some of the research ourselves. We have sent schools to different districts, different cities, different people to hear from around how the curricular choices have been making impact in schools. But going back to what I originally wanted to discuss is that respective to the different districts, when we're comparing districts, we're comparing apples to oranges and even bananas. District 19 has a large 90 to 95% population of Black and Brown students who are in that particular area socioeconomically disadvantaged in many cases. In our district, we have a different demographic. And so when I was talking about how we're going to approach doing the implementation of the curricular, it's with the guidance and support of our school leaders and staff members across our schools to figure out how we're going to roll out. When we talked about the difference between the fidelity and integrity, what it meant is I can't expect every single teacher in his first year to completely do every single component of the curricular 100% at his maximum best rate. So what we decided as a district is we were going to work on certain sections within the curricula to start implementing in year 1 to give us time to actually acclimate to the rest of the curricula throughout the years. That's the approach I'm taking. I can't speak to the wit and wisdom approach that District 19 took, and just so that I'm clear, even though they were a phase 1 district, they have been doing wit and wisdom for 3 years. And I know because we've sent some principals to their district to get support. Some of the things that we saw in the district, we had concerns about. It's not that what they were doing is wrong or inappropriate or not valid. It's just that based on our philosophy as a district, there were some things we needed to make sure we embedded. So for example, the independent reading is something that as a district we hold dear and we wanted to keep that. But we wanted to make sure that independent reading was coming with an actual with purpose, right? And so what was the intentionality of your reading, and how can I measure whether or not what you were doing during your independent time made an impact on what I wanted to see you being able to do as a reader, right? Versus, for example, in our district, our kindergartners are actually using play in their classrooms. At 107, I know that they're still using play. At PS10, who's doing Wit and Wisdom this year as a pilot, they're still using play in kindergarten. When they went to District 19, they weren't. And that's why there's differences between districts and how districts are rolling out, because we're trying to address the needs of our community, knowing that as a citywide system, the chancellor gave us the authority and the power to actually do things at an individual district level. And for these particular reasons, there are going to be differences and nuances based on what the particular needs are. As it relates to your question about the assessments, that's something that schools are still working on. I can probably report back to you more in June, because in May, schools are going to be working with each other to share their PD plans and rollout of how they're going to be implementing the particular modules and curricular for next school year. So I can probably get back to that question in May. Nicole, if you can just take note of Rehan's question so that I can be able to make sure that we give at least an answer at the May, the May CEC meeting.
Well, I can help you out with that because I know that superintendents in other districts also thought that there would be flexibility around the assessments and that schools that were doing well without a mandated curriculum would have the flexibility to be able to implement it
Was that
without fidelity. And in reality, that was not possible for those schools because they needed to turn in these data on a regular basis. Every couple of weeks, the data has to get turned in. So I just want to let you know that what your question is similar to what other superintendents' questions have been, and those phase 1 superintendents have now found the answer.
Yes, and we're a phase 2 district, Rayhan, which is very different. And I just want to be clear that we're a phase 2 district. And I don't know if you've seen, historically, I've been doing things slightly different from other districts because we are a unique district in my perspective. And so as a superintendent, I'm going to continue to make decisions educationally that are best sound for our students. And the number one priority for me is to ensure that all kids can read, but particularly our marginalized students who historically in this district, if you're looking at data for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and even 20 years worth, have not been making the mark. And part of that reasoning is because of the structures we had in place to support students to learn how to read. I can't hear. Hold on, is she mute?
No,
Rayhan, I think you're muted. There you go.
I was going to let you know that the children who are most disadvantaged are the ones who will suffer the most by being handed a test prep curriculum every single day. Those are the children who most need a curriculum that is tailored to their needs, that is responsive to their needs.
What I will say,
we can't. Maybe I'm muted again.
No,
it is exactly those children who need teacher-created curriculum the most.
Rayhan, can you show me
produced curriculum?
because
I'm having trouble speaking. I'm sorry. Every time I try to speak, it sounds like you're speaking.
You've actually spoken for about 5 minutes, and according to CEC rules, I think it's 2 minutes. So what I want to say here for you is, if you have any evidence of research that shows that the teacher-made curricular is moving the Black and brown students with IEPs who are also Ls, I would love to see your data that's research-based and evidence-based backed by
Before you start spending our tax money.
We can't, Rayhan, we can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. We have a permit till 9:30 and it's 9 o'clock. And I think we need to stop the back and forth, unfortunately. I don't think it's going to resolve anything. So I think we need to move on to the next presenter. Okay.
Just to finish, I just want to let you know that I will not be providing you those data, as I'm sure you will not be providing me the data that show that this curriculum is doing exactly what you're asking for.
CEC member Nancy Randall.
Penmanship. Does any of this curriculum have any intention of working on these children's penmanship? Any chance? Plus cursive. Any chance? We are teaching it. It's not part of the curriculum, but we are teaching it because shows that it is right. First of all, letter formation is critical to reduces the cognitive load of writing once they are fluent with letter formation, and also penmanship helps, like handwriting, cursive, also helps them write more fluently. So it's not part of Wit and Wisdom, but we are teaching it because we are reading the research.
Nancy, that's a good point to bring up. Perhaps we can get together some members of CEC and some parents to think about what are some things that are out there that we can look at collectively as a district. One of the things I'm trying to keep is that across the district that we're doing similar things because it's easier to evaluate whether or not it's been making an impact, and then it makes a stronger argument to continue to do it.
And in HMH, the small group instruction in the writing piece a lot. It fosters handwriting skills. So it's actually blank within the curriculum.
Nicole, if you could just make a note of that.
We do have one more hand on the chat.
I don't think we can go. I think we have to.
Can somebody copy that question and maybe I can answer it and send it to the CEC so that because I think we took a long time and.
Can I just make one small comment?
Yeah.
Just with regards to the kindergarten program, my kids are all, like, my youngest is now 14. So it's been a while, so I don't know what's changed. But one of the things I remember being completely shocked about, my husband's Dutch, I'm here, my kid went to a Montessori kindergarten. I visited my friend's 321 kindergarten class, and the kids were sitting at desks with pencils, and the school my kid was at and the schools I've observed in Holland, like the kids are moving from station to station, they're moving their bodies, they're socializing, there was no sitting at desks with, and it was more like interactive, it was more learning by doing. Is that kind of the
It's not the only thing I've seen, because
ideology?
I know
Like,
you've shared for 321, so like I've actually seen them going into different stations, working with partnerships, engaging in social emotional well-being. There's recess time that's embedded in their program and things like that. So like that may have been one aspect of what you saw where students are focusing on working on a particular thing. But I can say that that's been a trend probably for the past 20 years now. That I've seen this, even from when I started. Yeah, this has been a very long time. I think you're going back to like when I was in kindergarten where we had music and the teacher would actually, every teacher was required to teach using the piano. They had to be licensed by being able to use piano. And those practices have changed and evolved over time. Oh, yeah, okay.
kids are moving around and learning by doing, and it isn't sitting at a desk.
Yeah.
That's not natural to like.
Yeah, to a kindergartner, right, yeah.
Kindergartner. And I just like, I was a little bit shocked by that. That doesn't seem very, it seems like, you know, you're gonna get
Not natural, yeah.
And then somebody's talking about 90-minute blocks, so then I was like, what was that?
Yeah.
Are there really 90-minute blocks?
They're calling it 90-minute blocks, but if you go onto the state's website, and I'm not going to respond to that here, but if you go onto the state's website, you could see what the suggested amount of time for literacy is for students. So while it is 90 minutes, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be done 90 minutes back to back to back to back to back. In fact, most schools don't do it back to back to back to back because it's difficult for students to be able to retain all that information in 90 minutes. So they mix it up. They might do a read aloud in the afternoon. They might do a shared text during the daytime. It's mixed up. So it is 90 minutes worth of literacy time that has to be done, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be in sequential order, especially now since the UFT has the new contract that allows for not teaching after more than 3 consecutive periods. So there is flexibility in changing around that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are there any other CC member comments, questions?
Well, I would like to say, like, most of the schools, you know, the more important thing, the emotional development for the kids to learn to write and read. It's like to say, Ms. Christina, the kids have to come together, enjoy and socialize between them to create a area where they are calm down and peaceful, so you can catch them the attention to learn to write and read. So they need that type of development, that they need that type of space. Also, we like parents, I'm a parent, I have a 7-year-old kid, and I would recommend parents, if we want, we can prove the talent of our kids, like reading and writing, can go like, take a class, like we call it like a family ambassador, like parents learn how to write and read, and can go to the house and teach to write and read to the kids. To find a way to do and improve the skills to write and reading. All different are kids. All the kids are different. Like our superintendent say, all the schools are different and unique. So everybody gonna try a different way to do it.
Yeah, and just to add, because Alexandra's there, and I'm welcome to send my email, Alexandra, in the chat so that you can reach out with your question, but just to address what you were saying, I know what you're saying was confusing because the majority of the students in District 19 are Black and brown. What I was trying to say with that is District 19 has been making great gains in their district as a result of using wit and wisdom. Their students are far behind for a lot of reasons, but they have been making gains despite all the adversities that they're facing. What I'm saying is District 15, because we have a different community, it's the reason why there's flexibility around how we're using the curricular, because we don't have the same demographics where all of our kids needed verbatim with fidelity every day in and out. And so that's kind of what I was trying to address when it came to the differences between 19 and 15, because I know the work that Dr. Collins is doing in her district, and since she's been implementing Wit and Wisdom, they have seen significant gains year after year after year.
All right. Is that it for CEC members? Anybody else? No? Okay, Yuette, you're up.
Did we lose our screen? Our screen on this one?
Let me fix it. No.
We might be able to vote on the mutual aid thing. So, just so you guys can have some time, I'm just gonna, Shanice, don't worry about it. It's okay, she'll share the deck.
Can we just
with
share
you.
the screen? Yeah, share the deck on the screen.
You can just run it on here. Or not. So
She's gonna run it on her laptop and share it on the Zoom so that we can see.
Body's not muted. Yes.
We're in it too.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I am going to zoom through this because it is late and I sense the CEC wants to do some business before the permit runs out. Go, you guys.
Don't worry about it.
Next slide. Oh, it's so weird not to be able to control this. You can keep going. One more. So March is Women's History Month. These are our fabulous, we call them the Femme Fabulous principals of Brooklyn North High Schools. And in District 15, we celebrate Valerie Waugh at CASA and Don McConey at Digital Tech and Jill Sandusky at PSC. Just honoring the way our women lead is a beautiful thing to do. And if you follow us on Instagram, you'll see that we've been posting every day. And yesterday's post was actually about the Division IIIA Women's Basketball Champions, which is the Brooklyn High School for Law and Tech, and their MVP, who also runs around our district office like a lunatic, and we love her so much. But March is all about women for us. Next slide, please. Also about attendance. This is a time of year where high school students get frisky as spring comes, and they do, right? Like, there are just so many beautiful things on this planet other than getting to school on time. So we have in each of our schools a dedicated attendance team, and right now the action research work we're doing is around students who they know are at risk. These are students who are not yet chronically absent, who maybe with one more day of being out will be. So we're keeping a close eye on them. We're bringing in families and community-based organizations, and just looking at the data every day and just keeping our arms around them, because right now our district is meeting our CEP goals of close to 90% attendance and less than 30% chronic absenteeism. And we know it gets harder and harder as the weather gets nicer and nicer. So attendance is a big focus. Today we had a joint meeting with our school counselors and our parent coordinators. And the two topics of conversation was progress to graduation, how parent coordinators and school counselors can work together to ensure communications for everyone who cares about a child in one of our schools. And then our attendance team shared their strategies for progress monitoring as the spring goes on. Next slide, please. Current District 15 schools data, again, in terms of attendance, we're keeping an eye on CASA and Cobble Hill. Oh, and Liz Rodriguez Cobble Hill is also one of our fabulous leaders in District 15. Next slide, please. When you get a chance to look at the deck, you see our schools celebrating the past couple of months across your district. Next slide, please. And our MSK students, every month MSK has a focus, and this month the focus is inspiration. Some of our students are promoting book club. Some of our schools are working on vision boards. We're working with a company called Solve the Silence that brings women role models into our schools and in front of our students. And as part of the ramp up to what will be Martin Luther King's 100th birthday, I think, there's been a challenge across the United States for high school students to commit to 100 hours of community service leading up to Dr. King's, what would have been his centennial, and all of our MSK chapters are engaging in projects. Next slide, please. And one thing I wanted to note is, I will send this to Raphael to share, but April 2nd is World Autism Awareness Day, and in Brooklyn North High Schools we have 3 ASD Nest programs, and we have ASD Horizon programs. So on the night of April 2nd, we have these 2 amazing former DOE folks, current parent advocates, who will be running a workshop for support. It's a workshop for caregivers, so it can be parents or guardians. Some of our paraprofessionals are joining, and the topic is around supporting neurodivergent teens, or your neurodivergent child that you thought you knew until they became a teenager. So it should be a fun conversation. It'll be on Zoom. I will share the information with you guys, and hopefully you will join us. That is all I have, and thank you to Mamoon for the dinner and Ramadan Kareem to all. You guys do it right in District 15. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuet. Do we have any questions for Yuet in the chat or at the table, at the dais?
Any questions? Sorry, I did have one more thing. So officially, Principal Victoria Antonini has retired from the DOE in Sunset Park High School. Miguel Negron, who has been there all year as the supervisor in charge and acting principal, will continue as acting principal, and we will be conducting a C30 probably before spring break, and hope that by the time we go to Sunset Park for our CEC meeting, it will be hosted by an appointed principal. Wish us luck.
Yeah, we'll be there on May 28th.
Yes, so we're working backwards from that.
Right, okay.
Because
great.
wouldn't that be fun?
Yes, thank you. Are there questions for?
We don't see questions on the chat. Do we have any questions on the interpretation lines?
There are no questions on the Bangla line.
No questions on the Spanish line.
No questions from Mandarin line either.
Do the members have questions for you?
You'll be sending out the ASD workshop
Yes.
through the CEC.
I will send it to Shanice and I'll send it to
We'll
Raphael.
post it on the website and send it out.
And I want to give a quick shout out to our interpreter friends because gosh, it feels like so long ago, but a couple of weeks ago when we had our resource fair for newest New Yorkers over at Bushwick High School, we had over 500 families come throughout the day and an entire team of interpreters, and they did everything for us. Not just interpreting, they helped, we had eye doctors there, so they were helping the eye doctors with the eye tests. We gave out, I think, 1,000 winter coats. But kudos to our interpretation team, you guys rock.
Thank you so much, Yvette. Okay, so what time is it? It's 9:18. We have to be out of here at 9:30. We just lost our 7th member. So we can't vote on anything even if we wanted to. I do not think that we have time to read our bylaws. That was something else on the agenda because I think that will take longer than 10 minutes to read out. I'm just going to finish up with some updates from my report that I didn't get a chance to say. Last week, well, this past week, CEC 15 held 2 committee meetings. We had a communications committee meeting to collaborate with parents on a resolution to respond to and prevent hate speech. We continue to refine that resolution and hope to post it on an agenda in either April or May. We also convened a legislative committee meeting to collaborate on a resolution to ensure that students with IEPs and learning disabilities receive a continuum of appropriate support in their after-school programs. It has been brought to my attention, and many of you will know that when children have specific IEPs, sometimes the CBO can't meet their needs, and then the child is not accepted into that program. And then that parent has a lot of difficulty finding childcare so that they can go to work. So I'm working with a parent who feels very strongly about this, and so we're working on that resolution. And I just want to say these are really important conversations, and I really just want to thank the families who participated in these committee meetings and for entrusting the CEC with these very complex topics and for having the patience to work with a deliberative body on these issues. Last week, I also had the pleasure of attending a roundtable discussion with Borough President Antonio Reynoso and Councilmember Shahana Hanif. We discussed issues related to public health, safety, housing, and of course, education. Our partners from Safe Streets were there, and they were thrilled to learn that we had passed their universal daylighting resolution. Various community boards have also passed that resolution, and they are eager to have other CECs adopt it as well. Upcoming events, next Wednesday, April 3rd at 6:30 p.m. CEC 15 will have candidate interviews. We currently have a vacant seat on the council. We will be interviewing those people who sent in their applications. That interview will take place at 131 Livingston Street in room 301. We will also have a access on Zoom. And the President's Council will be participating in that interview. They will provide some questions. The council will vote to seat the new member on April 16th at our calendar business meeting, which will be at PS 958. And save the date for participatory budgeting voting week, which runs from April 6th to April 14th. Everyone ages 11 and up is eligible to vote on projects regardless of citizenship or voter registration status. Students and teachers can vote in these projects even if they do not reside in the council district of their school. There will be paper ballots at community poll sites, and you'll be able to vote online as well. So check with your city council member for more information about how to vote and how to volunteer at poll sites. With that, I'm going to move all of these agenda items to the next meeting in April. I'm sorry we got a late start, but New York City is wild and things happen. So thank you to the IBO, thank you to all the principals who presented on the literacy plan, and thank you to, of course, Brooklyn North High Schools. And we will see you again April 3rd. Good night, everybody. I officially adjourn this meeting at 9:24.
Thank you, interpretation. You're dismissed.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.